I don't actually know what I want to say. Was I saying? Okay. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. I'll see you inside. Now, the logical first step in any plan involving a grueling physical activity is to train for that activity. So, I did what any self-respecting geriatric millennial would do. I Googled, how do I train to walk a 14,000 foot mountain? Well, it turns out, the answer is, you walk up a bunch of smaller mountains. And when you live where I live, they aren't hard to find. That is Griffith Park. Well, that's Mount Lee, which is in Griffith Park. There's a lot more to it than that. We'll just go there. Griffith Park is a majestic oasis of nature, towering over the Los Angeles metropolitan area with a peak elevation over 1,600 feet. It is fully 1,300 feet higher than the surrounding area. The park is named for the man who bought the old Rancho Los Feliz, a Spanish land grant taken from Tongva land in the late 19th century, and who subsequently donated most of it to the city, a Welshman called Colonel Griffith J. Griffith. He originally used it as an ostrich farm during one of the many property rushes in California history, and who wanted to add an amphitheater and an observatory in 1912 after he was released from prison for shooting and wounding his wife in 1903, but by then the city wouldn't take his money. I promise I am not making any of that up. The park currently covers over 4,000 acres, and while there are manicured lawns, golf courses, concert venues, the zoo, museums, and other heavily curated spaces, it's mostly as wild as you can get, surrounded by America's second city. By population, sorry, Chicago. There is something quite special about getting a hankering to do some hiking, strapping on a pack with some water, gotta stay hydrated, this is basically a sun-baked desert after all, and walking up one of the broad but traffic-clogged arteries of the city, in my case Western Avenue, over or under the even more clogged 101, past the grungier parts of Santa Monica, Sunset, and Hollywood boulevards, and then waving to the greenery of the Fern Dell, on the way to pounding ground on dusty trail, surrounded now by steep hills and chaparral, nary a sign of the city in sight if you stick to the valleys. The lower approaches of the park include trails so broad they are practically dirt roads, very much in keeping with much of the hiking in the LA area, which is on fire roads. On the weekends, these trails are full of tourists, dog walkers, and equestrian riders, many of whom I think have underestimated the work they are about to do, and are quite often unclear on where they are trying to go. Not the horses, mind you. They get it. The park offers stunning views of downtown LA, Hollywood, Catalina Island, and the Valley. Special shout out to the Warner Lot if you find yourself on the Wisdom Tree side. But if views of heavily developed urban landscape don't inspire you, then you can just lose yourself on trails like the Eileen Getty Ridge Trail, where you can find yourself quite alone on a random weekday. Or my personal favorite, the totally unnamed trail on the ridge connecting Mount Chapel to Mount Lee, where it is quite easy to soak up the views of the birds riding thermals and generally feeling like you're out in a national park far away from the giant city just beneath you. In a way, I started training for this journey a long time ago. I would say it started in Berlin, earning college credit over the course of 10 days into February of the year. And then I took it a little further, 10 years later, walking more various European metropolises, including Berlin again. And then I dipped my toe on through hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And then somehow convincing my sister to walk the Camino de Santiago de Compostela became me joining her on the Camino. And then when the pandemic hit, I organized my suddenly empty days around a couple of goals, but one of them was walking 10,000 steps a day, which I did for a year. I suppose there are folks who push themselves for the sake of it, and hiking a 14er is about the physical activity itself, and there are definitely times on the trail when it's the only thing you can do is just put one foot in front of the other until you get to the top, which is a valuable life lesson. But hiking a 14er occurred to me because I just really like to walk. But that too isn't sufficient. That's not really, it's a predicate more than it is an origin. So to paraphrase my dramaturg and literary associate heroes, the real question is, why this mountain now? And we'll talk about this mountain part of it more later. So the question is, why now? In a way, it's kind of appropriate that you can't see the mountains right now. It's unusually cloudy, but everything about the last couple of years has been unusual about the weather. They use words like exceptional drought, and you keep hearing forest rangers who've worked in national parks for their entire lives, almost 30, 35 years, saying they've never seen anything like this ever. You read about a guy who thinks that the Joshua trees themselves might die out in Joshua Tree National Monument. And people who talk about mountains that are so dry that anything could burn them down at all. And you have fire season where the National Forest Service closes all of the national forests in the region for 2 weeks because they can't afford to have another fire that might start in those forests because there's too much of the other forest burning for them to handle right now. And you get a pretty good sense of why I went out walking. I never get tired of that view of downtown LA. Even if the smog obscuring it makes me pretty sad most of the time. I never get tired of seeing the ocean from here, even if there are fewer days when that can happen than I would like. I never get tired of seeing Griffith Observatory looking like it's floating above the city. And I never get tired of the view of the Verdugo Mountains and the peaks of the Angeles National Forest behind them. Which is where we are going to go next time. I'll take you into those peaks with me where we add the next element of the training, elevation. Until then, buen camino.